ipmNation.com.
Why is everybody whispering? There's no need to whisper. It's time to give everyone a preview of what's happening this week on IPM Nation. IPM Nation Sneak Speak, kicking around the week ahead.
Good evening and welcome to IPM Nation Sneak Speak episode 21. I'm Wayne Noel and I'm here with Matt Connarton. Hey Matt, what's the latest?
There.
What do we got going on?
Well, I'm trying to share the show out, and Facebook is being, the way Facebook is. Oh, here we go. So I'm just doing it. I'm trying to do it on my phone because my browser. Oh, there we go. My browser is being uncooperative. I don't know if it's Facebook's fault or. See, there you are.
I'm there, huh?
Obviously. Yeah, so there is plenty going on. I've got something really fun to share with everybody tonight. But how was your Father's Day, Wayne?
It was
you were here last week, obviously.
Yeah, it was great. We just sort of kicked back and relaxed. Let Derek cook.
Yeah. So you guys are related, Derek Noel. You are related.
Oh, nah.
Oh, okay. No, that's great. I of course, I did call my father. I am not a father myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have no paternal instinct whatsoever. People tell me I'd make a good dad, but I just don't. I don't know if it's birth rates are dropping.
Oh yeah.
So maybe I'm just a product of my generation. Although I think my generation for the most part. I mean, most of the people I went to high school with, I think, have had children. But so maybe I just was ahead of the curve, and it's actually the generations after me that just stopped breeding. But I think all over the world birth rates have fallen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, pretty much. But again, it's one of those things you never know until it happens.
Right.
What kind of father you'd be?
I'm trying not to let that happen, Wayne. I mean, there was a close call or two. We won't get into that on this show. But I'm glad you had a good Father's Day, and happy belated Father's Day to everybody out there. My father called into my show on Friday. Wayne, are you familiar with a gentleman named David Icke?
I've heard the name. I haven't listened to anything, though.
So David Icke is, here's what happened. So my father called my show, and he doesn't call my radio show very often. And he and I disagree politically on a lot of things. But he was pretty liberal when I was growing up, and now he's very conservative. So my dad calls the show, and he's he's all the way MAGA, very pro-Trump and everything. And I understand that, and so we're kind of. And I was actually saying something nice about Trump on Friday because I was giving him credit for calling off that strike against the Iranians because I felt that maybe not starting World War III was a good decision. So I was giving Trump credit. So I was trying to be nice to the president. So my father and of course my dad agreed with me because he loves Trump so much and everything that he does is awesome and great. So we're talking, and then he starts talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC as she's known, and he starts going into that, and I'll tell you, if I didn't know anything about politics, if I just woke up one day and said, you know what, today's the day. I'm going to give myself a crash course in politics, and I just spent a couple hours watching cable news. One of the first conclusions I would draw is that AOC is the most powerful, most influential politician in the entire world. But anyway, So then at the end of the conversation, so we're wrapping up, and I'm trying to get my dad to wind up because he's a bit of a chatterbox. And he's talking about, before I go, I just, he goes, Maddie, are you familiar with this gentleman, David Icke? I've been reading a lot of David Icke recently. And my jaw hit the floor. David Icke is... He makes Alex Jones seem pretty well-adjusted. David Icke is a hardcore conspiracy theorist who believes that the world is secretly controlled by reptilian shapeshifters and all this. And my dad starts talking about David Icke. And my dad's not going to see this, so I'm not worried about it. But it kind of shook me up. I got to tell you, because after the show, I'm like, I think my dad's losing his mind. So I haven't planned on talking about any of this tonight. I have something else that really fun that happened over the weekend. But so anyway, happy Father's Day to my dad. I'll say that in front of the world a week late. But I think he's something's happened. Anyway, so something really cool happened yesterday. So there's this gentleman who calls my show. I do a show called Matt Connarton Unleashed, and Wayne, I often see you in the chat on the Facebook Live chat.
Yeah, I jump in there with a few emojis.
Yes, I always appreciate it. It's always nice to see. And so I'm on live weekdays, 4 to 6 p.m., and I'm on here in Manchester, New Hampshire on wnH 95.3. But of course, you can also watch it on Facebook on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. And you can listen at ipmNation.com/live1. On our channel 1, live 1. So there's this guy who's been calling my show for maybe 6 months, maybe less. And he's a troll. And he calls my show, and he does these prank calls. And he started out, he disappointed me in the beginning. And I might have talked about this. Forgive me if this sounds familiar to everyone. I might have talked about this on the show before, Wayne, but there's been a huge new development with this story. So the first time he called my show, I was very disappointed because he just called, and then he pretended he was like excited to be talking to me and this and that, and then he started swearing. Now we're on an 8-second delay on WMNH, and it's terrestrial radio. You can't swear. So I had to hit the dump button, use that delay and hang up on him. And then I just kind of went on a little rant about how I'm not like most radio hosts. I actually appreciate prank calls if they are creative and funny, and you put some thought into what you're doing, or if you come up with a cool character or something, right? Otherwise, don't waste my time. So I have two giant pet peeves with prank calls. Don't call up and swear. I'm just going to hit the dump button anyway, and nobody hears it, although it does still go out on the Facebook feed. And it does go into the podcast. It just doesn't go out live on the FM signal. And don't order food. That's the other thing I hate, is when people call and they start putting a food order. That joke is older than my dead grandmother. That is like the original prank call in radio going back to Marconi's day. Okay, so I hate when people do that. That is like the least imaginative, least creative thing you can possibly do with a prank call. So I hate that. So I went on this big rant about that, how much I hate that. So then the guy calls back, and he's ordering food. And then I ended up hanging up on him again. But I couldn't really be mad at him because I felt like he was doing it ironically. Like he heard me talking about how much I hate when people order food. So now he's just calling back and ordering food specifically because he heard me talking about how much I hate that. So then he keeps calling on different days. He on a regular basis now, he's calling my show at least once a week. But the calls are getting more and more creative and interesting, and he's actually coming up with characters, and he's actually doing funny stuff. And within a relatively short period of time, I think I won him over. I think I won some respect from him because what was happening was, true to my word, I'm not your typical host. If I don't get mad, I don't get rattled. Again, unless I'm disappointed in the lack of creativity, I'll roll with it. I like to play. I like to have fun with the show. Even if I'm talking about a very serious subject, if somebody calls with a prank call in the middle of that, super serious discussion and it's funny, I'll roll with it. I don't care. I will shift gears and roll with it because I love that stuff. So then, I think I won some respect from him when he realized that about me, that I'm willing to play and I have a sense of humor and you can make fun of me and I'm not afraid to laugh at myself and this and that. So then he started directing his other people on the show, like John Hopwood, who's a frequent contributor on my program. He started making fun of John Hopwood and just upsetting various other people on the show. And I think he started to kind of see me as an ally. Because here's the thing. So Saturday night, last night, I'm on my computer and on my YouTube feed, because I subscribe to, I subscribe to a lot of different political shows, and one of the political shows I subscribe to on YouTube is The Majority Report, which is hosted by Sam Cedar, and he has a co-host, Michael Brooks, and it's a liberal show. And I see it show up in my feed, something about Sebastian Gorka. Somebody prank called Sebastian Gorka's radio show. Now, I personally find Sebastian Gorka to be vile and gross. So I saw that, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to listen to this. Now, when I clicked the video, I admit, in the back of my mind, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if it turns out it's the same guy who calls my show, who pranks Sebastian Gorka? Well, guess what? What a moment. I click the video, and at first it's just Sam Cedar and Michael Brooks, and they're talking about this prank call, and then they play it, and I hear the voice pranking Sebastian Gorka, and my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, that's him! And I grab my MacBook, and I run into the other room to Jenny. I'm like, it's him! It's the same guy! I couldn't believe it. I recognized his voice immediately and his cadence and everything. So then, after the clip, so then Sam Cedar and Michael Brooks, they're talking about, this guy, his name's Chris James. He has a show on Facebook called Not Even a Show, and so forth. So then I was like, so I went and I found his show, and I was like, this is the guy. I couldn't believe it. And I figured it out completely by accident, because I just happened to see that video show up in my feed. And then I'm going through, and anyone who has seen the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page in the last, 12 hours, 16 hours, you've seen my posts. Like, I started sharing out all these different episodes of his show, Not Even a Show, where he included clips of him calling my show. Because he timestamps them, like in the description. He shows you what the show is that he calls, because he calls a whole bunch of different shows, and the timestamps for them. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Because to me, it's awesome. I find it flattering. But again, I'm not like other hosts, because everybody else he calls, they get so mad. All these talk show hosts who take themselves so seriously. But the other weird thing though is, so all the other shows that he calls, they're all these right-wing conservative talk shows. I'm no right-wing conservative. I mean, I'm not as liberal as everyone thinks I am, but I do agree with conservatives on some things, actually. But I think I'm kind of a centrist, kind of a libertarian, etc. But for whatever reason, so I found I kept working backward, going through finding all the episodes where he had called my show, and I found the very first time that he called my show, and he, before each clip, he does a little intro, and he says, okay, next up, here's when I called Matt Connarton's show, and he never says I wish he'd say the name. He never says Matt Connarton Unleashed. He always just says the Matt Connarton Show, which is fine too, actually, but I shouldn't nitpick that. But the show is technically Matt Connarton Unleashed. That's the title. But I found the very first one, and he intros it by saying, so I found this right-wing shock jock, Matt Connarton, and then he plays the clip, and I'm like, right-wing shock jock. I mean, I guess I do some shock jock type stuff, but I'm not right-wing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what happened is, and we'll see if he calls my show this week, and I can ask him. If he'll give me a straight answer, he might not. But I think what might have happened is, for whatever reason, he thought I was a right-wing talk show host, because like I said, everybody else he calls is. So for whatever reason, he thought I was, and over the course of learning about me and listening to the show, he realizes now that I'm not. But he continues to call my show because, like I said, I'm willing to go with the bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually somebody else who ends up being the butt of the joke, which, whatever. Because like I said, I think I won some respect from him. And he's won a lot of respect from me. Because I went down the rabbit hole. Like I spent a lot of time last night just watching all these different episodes, even the one, I went back and started watching the ones I'm not in. The show is great. And I love prank calls. To me, it is an art form. And that's something that these other people that he calls, they probably don't agree. Clearly, because they get very upset and very frazzled. But I've always loved that stuff. In the past, I have spent a considerable amount of time listening to, like if you go on YouTube, you can find these compilations that are like 2-3 hours long, and there's a whole bunch of them of Sal and Richard from the Howard Stern show over the years, doing these amazingly just creative and hilarious prank calls, and it's great stuff. And I love that kind of stuff. And I love, in the early days of Stern, when they would, just call random shows and some very famous shows and just say Baba Booey and hang up, which was not particularly creative, but it was a consistent bit for a long time. So I love that stuff. The first television show I ever did, I was a co-host on, at the time it was called Norm's Psychic World. And hosted by Norm Mooney, and of course Norm was the host and the psychic, and I was the sarcastic, sort of smart-ass co-host and skeptic. And this guy named David Grover, who was a local guy here in Manchester, would call us with these prank calls. And I was in charge of the phone, and Norm would always, at first when David Grover would call, depending on Norm's mood, he would be, sometimes he would tell me, hang up, just hang up. And I wouldn't do it. And technically I should have, because it was his show, so he's in charge. But I was very self-conscious of, if I hang up on this guy who's trying to do something creative and funny, it kind of makes me look like a jerk. So I didn't like the way it reflected on me, because I wanted to play. And this guy was funny, and he was creative. And over time, Norm came around to see it my way. And we actually developed a friendship with the guy. Because he really wasn't trying to put anybody down. He was trying to be funny. And, and I think we kind of won him over, and he kind of won us over. And Norm eventually stopped, especially since he figured out I wasn't going to do it anyway. He stopped telling me to hang up on him, because he knew that I wouldn't. And the calls usually ended up being worth it. So Chris James is the name of the guy, though, that has been calling my show. Now I know. And actually, I texted him. No, I didn't text him. I don't have his number to text him. I'm sorry. I tweeted him, and I said, let me see if I can find it, because I had it on my phone ready to go, and then I accidentally closed it out.
When you went to Facebook.
Yeah, actually. That's exactly when. So, can I even find it now? Here we go. So I found him on Twitter. It was hard to find him. I couldn't find him on Facebook. I don't think he has any kind of a Facebook page. And there's no way to message him directly through YouTube. But I found him on Twitter. And it's at CJS, at the CJS. And I tweeted him. I said, saw a clip on @SamCedar of your recent call to Seb Gorka, and my jaw hit the floor when I heard your voice. Now I know you've been unmasked. Now I'm addicted to Not Even a Show. I'm officially a fan and looking forward to your next call. And then in parentheses I wrote, John Hopwood still hates you. Because John Hopwood hates him. And he retweeted that and just said, LOL, that rocks. So there you go. So I just hope that doesn't discourage him from calling now that I know who he is. But now I really look forward to his next call, and because it's just so weird how I figured it out. It was so just by chance, because he had left a clue once before. He called my show, and John Hopwood was in studio with me, and he was giving Hopwood a hard time. And Hopwood was saying something to him like, why do you waste your time calling this show? You're not funny, this and that. And Chris, of course, at the time I didn't know his name was Chris. He goes, well, you have no idea what I'm doing. I'm doing something much bigger and cooler than what you're doing. You don't know what I'm up to. And he said that, and I thought at the time, is he doing his own show and using these calls in his show? Mm-hmm. Or was that just a throwaway thing that he said to be funny, and he really just does this for the hell of it? I don't know. But it put the idea into my head. I was like, could it be that he's, but I had no way to figure it out. The one other weird thing that happened, though, too, was Peter White, who hosts the morning show, was on my show one day when Chris called in. And Chris observed that Peter White kind of resembles Sam Cedar. And when Chris said that, I don't know why, I just kind of thought, that means something. And I filed it away in the back of my mind. I was like, that Sam Cedar reference is going to mean something someday. I just kind of intuitive, I don't know how, and this was a while back, but I just kind of intuitively knew. I was like, that's going to mean something someday, that Sam Cedar reference. I don't know why, but it will. And then that's how I figured it out through Sam Cedar's show. So weird. If I hadn't seen that clip just happened to show up on YouTube, none of this would have even happened. It's so strange. So now I'm a big fan. And it's called Not Even a Show for anyone who wants to find it on YouTube. Give the guy some love. He's very funny. He calls all kinds of shows. And also, too, like I said, the first one that I found, he referred to me as a right-wing shock jock. But he never refers to me that way again. And, in subsequent clips, he always... And he says, there's episodes where I'm so flattered by this. He bookends it with clips from my show. He opens with a clip from my show, and he closes with a clip from my show. And I don't think he does that for anybody else, from what I saw. So
you've got a new fan.
What's that?
You've got a new fan.
Yeah. So that's a lot of fun. And I found an episode where he pranks a show called Red Pill Politics, which we also carry here on ipmNation. I don't know if he realizes that, if that's how he found the show or not, but they're actually on right now on one of our other live channels. I forget if they're on Live 1 or Live 2, but they're actually on right now. But there's a clip in one of his shows where he pranks Red Pill Politics, and there's a bunch of them where he pranks a show called Free Talk Live, which is a nationally syndicated show, but we do also carry them here on ipmNation as well. And those are very funny. Those guys don't know quite how to handle him. But everybody makes the same mistake, though. Like everybody, the mistake that they make is they get mad and they get all rattled and upset, and they hang up on him, and then they all say the same stuff. They're like, "Oh, what a loser! You got nothing better to do," or the classic one is they'll go, "Oh, by the way, we have you on caller ID, and we're going to be contacting the authorities." That goes way back, like all those compilations I talked about on YouTube of Sal and Richard from Howard Stern calling these shows. They all play that card. We have you on caller ID, or we have friends at the phone company, and we're going to get you. And it's like, it's so lame. It's such an empty threat. What are you going to do with that information? Plus, in this era, there's something called spoofing, where you can call someone with a fake number. The whole caller ID thing is irrelevant at this point anyway, in terms of figuring out who's calling you. And what are you going to do? Are you going to call the police and say, this guy prank called my radio show and I want to file a report? I mean, it's just so silly. So I think that's why he likes me, because I don't do any of that. I don't make any dumb threats. I don't get mad.
You just roll with it.
Under my skin. What's that?
You just roll with it.
I just roll with it because I like it. I respect it. It probably sounds very strange to say, and I'm probably the only one he's ever called who would say this, but I genuinely respect the art form of prank calling live radio shows. I think it's cool. I think if done correctly, it's amazing and fun and creative and I love it. And now my biggest worry with this whole thing is because of all that, now he's never going to call me again.
Yeah, he's going to go away quietly.
Yeah, I don't think so, though. I don't think he'll ghost me. I think that's what the young people say now. They talk about ghosting. I don't think he's going to do that. I hope not. I checked out some of his stand-up comedy, too. He's also a stand-up comic, and he's very funny. So his name, if you're looking for him, like I said, he has no presence on Facebook that I could find, but he's on YouTube. And he's on Twitter, and his name is Chris James, and he's a comedian from Vancouver. So that's where he's from, and I watched some of his stand-up too. Very, very funny. He seems to have a big following up there. He seems to be famous, at least in that area. So that's my big story from last night. So be sure to tune in this week on Matt Connarton Unleashed, and we'll see if we get any calls from Chris. Also, too, tomorrow on the show, on the Monday edition of Unleashed, my guests will be Mark and Justin from the show Abstract Transmissions, which we just started carrying. They are our newest edition on ipmNation, so they're going to come join me on Matt Connarton Unleashed. I was on their podcast recently, had a great time. On Tuesday, I'll be joined in studio by the band Dead Harrison. On Wednesday, I've got Shane. He has a project called Choking Games, and then we've got some other stuff happening later in the week as well. So it's going to be a big week this week on Matt Connarton Unleashed. And like I said, Abstract Transmissions is our newest show that we picked up, and that, I believe, is on Wednesday nights, if I remember correctly. So we're always adding new content. It's slowed down a little bit right now, but we'll keep adding stuff as we go into the future. And of course, coming up later tonight at not much later, actually at 8 p.m. You can see Derek Noel Fitness. And of course,
right after this, we shift that studio around.
Now, how much hassle is that? Is that like a big deal?
Nah, the shifting of the studio for that it takes about 10 minutes.
Okay. All right.
That's not too bad.
So it's not too bad. Yeah.
It's more or less just taking all the broadcast equipment, just shifting it to the other side, and moving the camera in front of it instead of behind it.
Do you have things on wheels?
You're able
to just... Oh, that's good. Okay.
That's why we call it a mobile studio.
Right. Do you have to unplug anything to do it?
Just one power cord, because I've got a power strip hooked up to the cart.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. All right. Well, that doesn't sound so bad.
Nah.
Very good. Well, Wayne, we appreciate all that you do for us here. You do a lot, and we appreciate it. And we know, we were talking kind of off air earlier. Brian will be back August 1st. It looks like, tentatively.
Yeah, tentatively. He may still show up for a quick 5 or 10 minute thing in the morning.
Yeah.
But. And again, I don't know if he's going to be broadcasting live yet.
Yeah.
But he does do it on Facebook Live.
Yes. Very good. So everybody keep an eye out for Brian Brawdy. He'll be back before we know it. All right. So Derek Noel Fitness is up coming up at 8. Wayne, as always, thank you so much, my friend.
Yep. I have fun with it.
Yeah, good. That's what it's all about. Thank you all for watching and or listening, and we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Episode 21 of IPM Nation Sneak Speak is in the bag, as they say. Is that what they say? In the bag, in the can? Something. It's done.
The bag sounds better than in the can.
For another week. It does. Yeah, that does sound better. All right, bye, everybody.